It has to deal with Tucker Carlson and Advertisers leaving his Fox News show. Now, look, Tucker Carlson is a very unique individual. I know that we're critical of everyone on corporate media, Fox News, MSNBC, CNN, but I think it's very interesting that now some of his comments from previous shows are now being, reviewed. Especially, I think it's some of the comments he made on the one show, Bubba the Love Sponge, which was he was like a Howard Stern kind of person, but no one's Howard Stern. There's only one shock jock in radio history, and that's Howard Stern. Everyone else is an imitator. So, but what's going on with him and his show?
So here's the interesting thing: is he wasn't like a host of that show. He just happened to be a frequent call-in guest.
Yeah, he was a guest.
He would call in, and you could tell he's calling on just like a cell phone or something. It's not very great audio quality. But there's this huge compilation of all these incendiary things that he said. Basically, he had comments where he's defending a guy who facilitated an illegal wedding between a 20-some-year-old and like a 15 or 16-year-old.
And he was like, "That's good, right?"
He was basically like, "How come this guy's getting arrested for aiding and abetting rape? He didn't rape anyone." It's like, right, that's why he was arrested, for aiding and abetting, right? If you're the getaway driver, it doesn't mean you robbed the bank. It means you were aiding and abetting.
Yeah. Right.
Why is this hard to understand?
Also, want this somebody action Shiva, you asked, what is Love Sponge? I don't know. It was just a radio shock jock name. There's guys like Bubba the Love Sponge, and there was Opie and Anthony, Man Cow. I think they were all trying to really make a shocking name so that they can get notoriety and a following. This was in the early days of shock radio, back in the day when you could swear on the radio, have porn stars on the radio. It was an interesting time. I'm actually old enough to remember when...
I see, bringing your age up.
I know, ageism. I'm old enough to remember when radio actually used to be a lot of fun to listen to until, some time ago. I think it was one of the Super Bowls where, Justin Timberlake had that incident.
Oh, that's what did that?
I think that's one of the incidents that actually led to that.
First it was OJ creating CNN, then it was this. I've lost
but there's a lot more variables to it, so that's why that's why some of these weird names, you hear them. So, and again, they had a lot of shocking guests on their show, so Tucker Carlson.
I really hope in the future, if we get to a point where a shock jock name could just be Neocon.
Oh, jeez. Well, that's at CNN already. So there you go.
So
go
this
ahead.
is what really gets me. I have a trouble with stories like this, because basically what we're saying is your opinions that you espoused in the past are so abhorrent that we are going to punish you for them in the present day. And so it's like, okay, he said, incendiary things that are demonstrably horrible. I can agree to that. What is that? What should we do with that information? So I'm reminded, it's interesting that this came up this week, because also this week, James Gunn was reinstated at Marvel. I don't know if you remember that story, but he was the director of the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, and some tweets of his or something he had said, and maybe it wasn't tweets, but it was something he had said years ago, came up, there was big controversy, and Marvel fired him. Well, they just brought him back because what he actually said in the past wasn't actually that incendiary and inflammatory.
And he was joking, although we're terribly...
It was
a terrible joke, but it didn't require him to get fired.
It's more the level of Count Dankula type content.
Right, and so Tucker Carlson's quotes here are far more incendiary and inflammatory and worthy of condemnation. Does that mean Fox will fire him? Not because of the comments, but maybe because advertisers are bailing from his show. So that's the crux of this story is advertisers don't want to be associated with that, and they're bailing, and that could be what brings him down. It's not like, he didn't do a Roger Ailes, but
for the record too, look, we don't agree with Tucker Carlson. It's very interesting that this is being done to him now. And again, then we mentioned James Gunn too, who said a very insensitive joke, but it wasn't on purpose. So I think we got to be careful on how social media attacks people too, because there's a lot of consequences to this.
Here's what I'm going to say. I think that in principle and in most things, you guys are entirely right. But I think that right now we live in such a topsy-turvy existence that this is standard. So I give an example. Did you remember that the stuff that just happened on YouTube very recently? Think of all the times the apocalypse has happened over such a nothing burger occurring and what that means. Mm-hmm. So right now, if someone does a video and they find a video where something not bad is happening, but the comments are bad, that causes advertisers to freak out. Right now, advertisers are in this spot where they feel like if anything's scandalous, we can't touch it, and that's happening on mainstream media, who is literally the opposite is happening. We have so few viewers at mainstream media. We have to be shock jocks in order to get viewership, to get advertisers. So all these incentives are perverse and counteracting themselves. So if you're an advertiser and someone does this weird thing on YouTube and you go, I'm going to pull my YouTube stuff back, I think it's only fair that if the same thing is applied on TV, because it would be worse, in my opinion, if Tucker Carlson did all those things and with everything that happens on YouTube being hit and that TV would be separate, because then TV would go, oh, we have a complete monopoly to continue to attack YouTube, like make more stuff about PewDiePie, do anything to hurt them because they're our competition. Mm-hmm. Because what isn't talked about on this is that this is all happening in a media shift where television media is losing power, online media is gaining power, and they're trying to stop it. So perhaps I'm looking at it from a different point of view, using different perspectives than you guys are, because I think that what you're bringing up, I don't disagree with any of it, but I think in the way things are organized now, at least he's also being dinged for exactly the same thing that YouTubers are being dinged for.
Yeah, and there's another thing too. It's like, when we look at the shows that, especially the show that Tucker Carlson was on and other previous shock jocks, mm-hmm. There was a point in American history, especially in radio's history, that it was a license to print money, and a lot of advertisers went to Howard Stern, Opie and Anthony, Bubba the Love Sponge, I don't know about him too much, Man Cow too back in the day, where they could do all these crazy shows, and they did get a lot. They were hosting concerts and events. They were having a lot of top tier musicians on their shows, and they always had controversial guests. I mean, it was their MO. It was very popular until it got to the point to where a lot of incidences came up, and eventually the government got involved and called for mass censorship, and then radio lost its power, no longer became an entity where people used to listen to or either watch the equivalent of those radio shows on television anymore. And now we're kind of seeing the same thing done to a lot of, like you mentioned, to a lot of social media leaders on YouTube. And the thing is that we can all be outraged by what somebody says that's really bad and horrible. And mind you, what Tucker Carlson was saying was disgusting. It's straight out, right off the bat. It's disgusting. But it's a matter of how it's portrayed and what comes next. Because if you start censoring and getting after people who said some horrible things 10 years from now or 10 years in the past, well, that means any other channel on YouTube or any other social media platform can be shut down, because then all of a sudden you have an algorithm that's going after everybody and everything for anything that's controversial. And the one thing that humans like to do is be entertained and watch controversial things. Not seeing people get hurt, but at least enjoy a good show. Now, if you look at modern television and radio, it's bland, it's censored, it's not entertaining. I stopped watching television. The only shows I watch are now on social media. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that's it.
And I want to say that this is exactly what I'm talking about, that the rules as they exist now, if we could get to a point, because that would be the best outcome, where people could be free and talk about, I would be fine if Fox News wants to talk about their propaganda and be propagandists as much as they want. I'm fine with that, as long as all YouTube shows follow the same rules, as long as radio can go back to what it was. I just want some amount of consistency. I care more, especially in something like this, more about consistency, because the worst thing that I see is hypocrisy and double standards, because double standards and hypocrisy always benefit the established players.
Yeah. So I want to point out, we mentioned very briefly that in general, we don't share many of the same views as Tucker Carlson, and that is absolutely true.
Yeah.
That said, for people who are consumers of cable news, particularly people who are consumers of Fox News, he's about the only person consistently on television who discusses foreign policy from an anti-interventionist perspective. He's the only one who kind of had pretty decent coverage of why are we going to war with Syria and let's question this. And that's sort of the one area, he gets to his anti-interventionism from a right-wing perspective, which I think is the wrong way to get there, but he gets there. And while I disagree...
There's no one else on all of mainstream media.
He's the only one. and it's on Fox News.
Of all the channels, Fox News.
Right.
Yeah.
And so if he gets fired, if they shut down his show over these comments and the fact that advertisers are leaving his show, I don't agree with a lot of what he says, but there will be a loss of that perspective in cable news.
Yeah. And
It's crazy that he's the only one. It's absurd.
He's the only one.
hey,
It's so crazy.
it's a mad world, and we're all living in it.
If you like what you just saw, make sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Also, make sure to hit that bell icon and give it a thumbs up.
Help us build a better future, and also really help build a strong independent media network here in the city of Chicago. Let's upset the neoliberal establishment.